I watched my brothers pop champagne, celebrating the billion-dollar deal they made selling my life's work behind my back. They laughed about finally cutting me out, unaware that the legal papers currently being served would bankrupt them by morning. From the corner of the executive lounge, clutching a glass of sparkling water I didn't want, I observed the spectacle. It was grotesque. My older brother, David, was standing on the mahogany table, shaking a bottle of Dom Perignon like he had just won the Grand Prix. My younger brother, Michael, was already halfway through a bottle of scotch, his tie loosened, draping his arm around a venture capitalist from Sterling Haas Pharmaceuticals. "To the visionaries," David shouted, spraying foam onto the expensive Persian rug. "To the Chang legacy." "To the money," Michael slurred, raising his glass. They didn't toast the science. They didn't toast the thousands of hours of failed synthesis, the nights I slept on the lab floor, or the chemical burns on my hands. They certainly didn't toast me. To them, I wasn't Susan Chang, the lead biochemist and actual inventor of the NGen neural lattice. I was just Susie, the little sister who was good at mixing potions in the back while the men handled the business. The deal they had signed an hour ago sold the exclusive rights to my neural regeneration technology to Sterling Haas for $1.2 billion. The terms were clear: a complete buyout of Chang Innovations, including all intellectual property, patents, and future derivatives. What David and Michael didn't know, what they were too arrogant to check, was that Chang Innovations didn't own the technology. I did. To understand why I let them get this far, why I let them sign their names to a fraud of biblical proportions, you have to understand the family dynamic I clawed my way out of. Growing up in the Chang household was an exercise in invisibility. My father founded Chang Innovations 30 years ago as a mid-level manufacturer of generic medical supplies. He was a traditionalist in the worst sense of the word. In his eyes, sons were heirs and daughters were expenses to be married off. David was the golden boy. He got the MBA from Wharton, the Audi at 16, and the corner office the day he graduated. He was charming, handsome, and utterly hollow. He couldn't read a balance sheet to save his life, but he could talk a starving man out of a sandwich. Michael was the wild card. He was supposed to handle operations, but mostly he handled the company credit card at various clubs in Vegas. He was the CFO, Chief Fun Officer, as he liked to joke. And then there was me, Susan, the nerd. While they were networking and partying, I was dissecting frogs and building circuit boards. When I got into MIT with a full scholarship, my father's reaction was a grunt and a comment about how it would look good on a marriage resume. I joined the company 5 years ago, not because I wanted to, but because I was guilt-tripped into it. The company was stagnating, the generics market was drying up, and they needed a proprietary product to save the stock price. "Come home, Susie," my mother had pleaded. "Help your brothers. Do it for the family." So I did. I took a basement lab in the R&D wing, a wing that was basically a janitor's closet with a microscope, and I got to work. My goal was ambitious: a synthetic, biocompatible lattice that could bridge severed nerves in spinal cord injuries. It was the holy grail of neurosurgery. For 4 years, I disappeared. I missed Christmases, I missed birthdays, I didn't date, I didn't have hobbies. I had the lattice. The breakthrough happened 18 months ago. I remember the moment clearly. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. The rats in the test group weren't just showing reflex reactions. They were walking. The lattice had integrated. The nerves had refused. I had cured paralysis in a rodent model. I ran upstairs, disheveled and smelling of ozone, to tell David. He was in his office practicing his putting stroke. "It works," I breathed, shaking. "David, it works. We can fix spinal injuries." He didn't ask about the science. He didn't ask about the implications for human suffering. He dropped his putter and asked one question: "How much is it worth?" "I don't know, billions potentially, but we need to run clinical trials. We need to peer review." "Billions," he interrupted, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Good work, Susie. Go clean yourself up. You look like a wreck." From that day on, the dynamic shifted. Suddenly, David and Michael were very interested in the project, but not the work. They were interested in the sale. They started locking me out of meetings. They hired a flashy marketing firm to brand the lattice as Neuralink X, a terrible name. They started courting big pharma. I warned them. It's not ready to sell, I told them during a heated boardroom meeting 6 months ago. The data needs verification, and the patent filings are complex. Stick to the beakers, Susan, Michael had sneered, spinning a pen. Leave the business to the big boys. We're looking for an exit strategy. We want to sell the whole company and retire to Fiji. You can't sell the company without my consent, I argued. I own 15%. Actually, David smiled, sliding a document across the table, you don't. It was a restructuring agreement I had signed 3 years ago, buried in a stack of insurance paperwork. I had trusted them. I hadn't read the fine print. The document reclassified my shares as non-voting Class B stock. I had no say in the sale. I had no say in the board. I was an employee. We own the company, David said, his voice dropping to a patronizing whisper. We own the lab, we own you. And when we sell, we'll make sure you get a nice little bonus, maybe enough to buy a cat and a condo. That was the moment love died. That was the moment the sister in me evaporated, and only the scientist remained. A scientist looks at variables, analyzes threats, and neutralizes them. They thought they owned me because they owned the building I worked in, but they forgot one critical detail about their little sister. I was paranoid. I knew my father and brothers were sloppy with paperwork. I knew they cut corners. So when I started the Lattice project, I didn't do the core work on the company servers. I didn't write the primary molecular code on company laptops. I rented a private server farm with my own money. I bought my own equipment for the crucial synthesis steps and kept it in a storage unit across town. I worked there on weekends. And most importantly, I filed the patents myself, not through Chang Innovations, through a shell LLC I created called Phoenix Bioworks. The patent for the specific molecular structure of the lattice, the composition of matter patent, which is the only one that truly matters, was granted to Phoenix Bioworks 3 months ago. At Chang Innovations, I only filed method of use patents and some derivative applications. They looked impressive on paper, but without the molecular rights, they were useless. It was like selling a car manual without the car. I kept waiting for their due diligence team to catch it. Sterling Haas is a massive conglomerate. Surely their lawyers would check the chain of title on the primary patent. But David and Michael were good at one thing: deception. They had falsified the IP assignment documents. They forged my signature on declarations stating that Chang Innovations owned all rights to the invention. They presented Sterling Haas with a clean, fraudulent bill of health. Sterling Haas, eager to beat competitors to the market, rushed the closing. They trusted the Chang dynasty. So here we were. The champagne was flowing, the ink was dry, the wire transfer of $600 million, the first tranche, had hit the Chang Innovations account an hour ago. David raised his glass again, spotting me in the corner. He stumbled over, wrapping a sweaty arm around my shoulders. He smelled of expensive cologne and betrayal. "Susie, why the long face?" He grinned, his teeth white and predatory. "We did it. Or, well, we did it, but you helped." "I helped," I repeated, my voice flat. "Look," he said, leaning in close, his voice lowering. "I know you're upset about the shares, but Mike and I talked. We're going to write you a personal check, $5 million, tax-free. You can retire. Go find a husband. You're almost 30, clock's ticking, right?" $5 million. From a $1.2 billion deal, 0.4%. "That's generous, David," I said, staring at the bubbles in his glass. "We take care of family," he said, slapping my back. "Now smile, the photographers are coming." He wandered off to high-five the Sterling Haas CEO, a man named Mr. Vance, who looked like a shark in a tailored suit. I checked my watch, 8:15 p.m. The process server was scheduled for 8:20 p.m. I took a sip of my water. The calmness I felt was terrifying. I should have been screaming. I should have been crying. Instead, I felt like I was watching a chemical reaction reach its inevitable conclusion. At 8:19 p.m., the elevator doors to the penthouse suite opened. The music was loud, some generic house beat, so no one noticed the 2 men in dark suits and the uniformed officer stepping out. David was in the middle of a speech about synergy. "This merger represents the future," he bellowed, "a future where Chang Innovations leads the world." The music cut out abruptly. One of the men in suits had walked over to the DJ booth and pulled the plug. "Hey," Michael shouted, spilling his scotch. "What the hell? We rented this whole floor." The lead man, a tall, severe-looking individual holding a thick stack of documents, stepped into the center of the room. He didn't look at the partygoers. He looked straight at David. "David Chang?" the man asked. His voice carried without shouting. "Who wants to know?" David stepped down from the table, trying to look imposing. "I'm the CEO of this company. If you're the strippers, you're early and overdressed." Laughter from the sycophants. "I am a federal process server," the man said. He walked forward and shoved the stack of papers against David's chest. "You are being served." "Served for what?" David laughed, though it sounded nervous. "A parking ticket? And Michael Chang?" The man turned. Michael froze. Another stack of papers was thrust into his hands. "What is this?" Mr. Vance, the Sterling Haas CEO, stepped forward. "We're in the middle of a celebration." "I advise you to check your email, Mr. Vance," the process server said. "My client has just filed an injunction against Chang Innovations, David Chang, and Michael Chang for patent infringement, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and theft of intellectual property." "Fraud?" Vance turned purple. "Who is your client?" The process server pointed across the room. "To me." The silence that descended on the room was heavier than lead. Every head turned. David looked at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers. "Susan?" he whispered. What is this?" I set my water glass down on a side table. The condensation left a ring. I picked up my purse and walked to the center of the room. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. "It's the truth, David," I said. My voice was steady, amplified by the sudden quiet. "You're suing us?" Michael sputtered, flipping through the pages. "You can't sue us. We're family." "I'm not just suing you," I said. "I'm invalidating the sale." I turned to Mr. Vance. He was looking at his phone, furiously scrolling. His face had gone pale. "Mr. Vance," I said politely, "the technology you just purchased, the N-Gen lattice, you bought the packaging. You didn't buy the product." "We bought the patents," Vance roared, waving a hand at David. "They guaranteed the IP." "They guaranteed they owned the patents filed by Chang Innovations," I corrected. "And they do, but those patents are derivative. The master patent, U.S. patent number 11-409B, covering the molecular synthesis of the neural lattice, belongs to Phoenix Bioworks LLC. "Who the hell is Phoenix Bioworks?" David screamed. "I am," I said. The realization hit David like a physical blow. He staggered back. You stole it." "I invented it," I snapped, my voice finally rising, the anger bleeding through the ice. "I invented it on my own time, on my own equipment, with my own money. You cut my budget, remember? You told me to make do. So I did. I made do outside of this company." "But your contract..." David grasped at straws. "Anything you make belongs to us." "My contract," I said, reciting the clause I had memorized, "states that intellectual property developed using company resources or during company hours belongs to Chang Innovations. I have logs, receipts, and server timestamps proving that every single line of the master code was created between Friday 8 p.m. and Monday 6 a.m. in a rented facility on hardware I purchased." I looked at Mr. Vance. "Your due diligence team missed it because David forged the assignment declarations. He signed my name, claiming I had transferred the rights. That is a felony, by the way." Mr. Vance turned to David. The look in his eyes was murderous. "Is this true? Did you forge the chain of title?" David was hyperventilating. "It was a formality. She's my sister. It's all the same money." "It is not the same money," Vance screamed. He turned to his lawyers, who were huddled in the corner, frantically on their phones. "Cancel the wire, claw it back, now." "You can't," Michael yelled. "We already moved it to the offshore accounts." "Then you just added wire fraud and money laundering to the list," the process server noted dryly. I looked at my brothers. They looked small. The champagne on the rug was drying into a sticky stain. The expensive suits suddenly looked like costumes. The injunction I just filed freezes all assets of Chang Innovations and your personal accounts, I told them. You can't spend a dime of that money, and since the sale was predicated on fraud, the deal is void. Sterling Haas will sue you for the breach. I am suing you for the theft. Susan, David pleaded, his voice cracking. He tried to step toward me, but the security guard blocked him. Susan, please, we can fix this. We'll give you half. We'll give you 60%. Just sign the transfer, please. Dad will have a heart attack. Dad should have thought of that when he gave the company to a distinct average business major instead of the person who actually built the product, I said. I pulled a document from my purse. This, I said, holding it up, is a licensing agreement. Hope flared in David's eyes. Yes, okay, we'll license it from you. Not from you, I said. I turned to Mr. Vance. Phoenix Bioworks is willing to license the technology directly to Sterling Haas, exclusive rights, for $1.5 billion, plus a 5% royalty in perpetuity. Vance stopped screaming. He looked at me, then at the weeping brothers, then back at me. He was a shark, and he recognized blood in the water. He also recognized that I was the one holding the bait. Directly? Vance asked, cutting out Chang Innovations completely? Completely, I said. Chang Innovations has nothing to sell you. They are a shell company with a lot of debt and a looming criminal investigation. Susan, Michael shrieked, you're killing us. You're bankrupting the family. The family died a long time ago, I said. This is just business. Isn't that what you always told me? It's just business, Susie. Vance walked over to me, extending a hand. Miss Chang, can you be at our offices tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I'll bring my lawyers, I said, shaking his hand. I turned to leave. The party was over. The guests were fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. David collapsed onto the champagne-soaked rug, burying his head in his hands. Michael was yelling at the process server, who was calmly writing down notes. I walked to the elevator. As the doors began to close, I saw David look up. His face was a mask of ruin and confusion. Why? He mouthed. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The doors shut, cutting off the sight of my former life. The fallout was swift and brutal. By the next morning, the story had leaked to the press. Billion-dollar betrayal. Sister outsmarts fraudulent brothers. Sterling Haas successfully froze the wire transfer. David and Michael had spent about $200,000 in deposits for cars and houses in that 1 hour, money they now didn't have. The criminal investigation began 3 days later. The forgery was clumsy. David had literally traced my signature from a birthday card. Because the amount attempted to be stolen exceeded $1 billion, the DA was looking at serious prison time. My parents tried to intervene. My mother called me, screaming that I was an ungrateful daughter, that I should have taken the $5 million and been happy. My father showed up at my new apartment, a penthouse I rented while my own home was being built, demanding I drop the lawsuit. You are destroying your brothers' lives, he shouted in my lobby. They destroyed their own lives, I told him, flanked by my own security team. I just turned on the lights. I didn't drop the suit. I pressed it. Chang Innovations filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 2 months later. The assets were liquidated. The office building, the labs, the furniture, all sold. David and Michael lost everything. Their condos, their cars, their stocks. David's wife left him, taking the kids. Michael is currently living in my parents' basement awaiting trial for wire fraud. As for me, the deal with Sterling Haas went through. Phoenix Bioworks is now the leading name in regenerative medicine. I retained creative control. I hired a team of researchers, real scientists who are paid well and treated with respect. I am writing this from the balcony of my villa in Tuscany. I took a month off. For the first time in 10 years, I am not sleeping in a lab. I am not worrying about budgets. Yesterday, I received a letter from David. It was sent from the county jail. He asked for money for his legal defense. He appealed to my humanity. I wrote a check for exactly the amount of a one-way bus ticket, and in the memo line, I wrote, for the exit strategy.